with that being said, let's go ahead and do the Pledge of Allegiance. If you'll stand with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If you remain standing for a moment of silence, please. Thank you. Okay, so at this time, let's go ahead and adopt the agenda with the potential change of moving the closed session up to between items B and C, if Mr. Wood's report doesn't take up all of the allotted time, with a time of 6:30 to begin from item C through the remainder of the agenda. Does that sound good? Any other changes? I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
We have a motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Okay, Warren?
Mayor Gardner, members of the board, Mr. Spencer. I'd like to, if I could, go to the podium so I don't have
Please.
to turn left.
Yes, please. First of all, we've made it this far. So, so far so good, right?
So good. Can y'all hear and see? Can you see the presentation? Okay. So actually it's been 120 days. And part of the requirement of the board was for me to present an assessment of what I found in the organization the first 100 days. So that's what we'll do here this evening. We'll just run through this. As we run through this, again, I've been here 4 months. You all have been here for years. If you disagree with something or want to challenge me on something, I mean, we can have I'm good with that because, like, you have much more.
Well, this is, intended to technically be more like
That
a
better?
work session.
Okay.
So,
Thank you. Okay. So we'll run through this. And just starting from a broad perspective, one of the things, I did a lot of, before I applied to become manager in Waxhaw, I did some research, looked at a lot of census data and a lot of other things. And Waxhaw really is right now a special place at a special time. And I want to talk about the community first and then get into the organization after that. So if you look at the census data that has been recently updated between 2009 and 2013, Waxhaw is, your numbers, our numbers, are as strong as anybody's in the country, and we'll run through some of this. So your population growth rate, 14% versus the states was 3.3, and across the country is 2.5% population growth rate. So again, that is, well documented, off the charts. Property tax growth rate during that time span, the depths of the Great Recession even, the town averaged a 4% growth rate. It was flat across the state of North Carolina, more than likely flat across the country. Median household income, $77,000 in Waxhaw, $46,000 across the state, a little better than that across the country. Median home value, $231,000 in Waxhaw, $153,000 in North Carolina, $176,000 across the country. Home ownership rate, 88% home ownership rate in Waxhaw, 66% across the state and about that across the country. This is a little bit different. Average travel time to work, 30 minutes for Waxhaw residents, 23 minutes for folks in the state of North Carolina, 25 minutes for folks across the country. So when we talk about economic development, just keep that statistic in mind. It'd be nice to have more employment opportunities in Waxhaw to cut that number down, make it more convenient for folks. But folks are willing to travel a little bit longer to live in Waxhaw. That's a great sign. Bachelor's degree, 55% of the folks in Waxhaw have a bachelor's degree or higher. It's almost half of that across the state and country. Persons under 18, to me, this is phenomenal. Persons under 18 years old, 35% of Waxhaw's population is less than 18, compared to 24% across the state. Persons 65 years or older, 7%, almost half of what the state average is. And the poverty level, 5% in Waxhaw, 17% in the state of North Carolina, 15% across the country. So folks, if anybody wonders why folks want to move to Waxhaw, I mean, look at those numbers. It's a great place to live, and my guess is they're going to keep coming for some time. So, wow, we must be doing everything right. Low crime, great schools, great downtown, great neighborhoods, close. I've heard the term close enough to Charlotte but far enough away. I'm not sure what that means, but okay. Waxhaw is attracting, when you look at those demographics, Waxhaw is attracting a young, well-educated, high-earning demographic with larger than average families. That's the demographic that cities and towns across the country are trying to attract, and Waxhaw is doing that. I heard somebody say Waxhaw is America's last best place. However, I think we could recognize that there are some opportunities to make it even better. Waxhaw had when you look at the census data, Waxhaw had no measurable census data related to manufacturer shipments, merchant wholesaler sales, accommodation and food service sales, or retail sales per capita. And that's, obviously we have resale sales in Waxhaw, but from the Census Bureau's perspective, they weren't measurable on a per capita basis. So we've got a lot of work to do. I think the single-family residential side of the equation has been very strong. The business side of the equation, and we've talked about that, has not been as strong.
Our economy is essentially still the economy of a town of 3,000 people,
Yes.
not a town of 30,000.
Right, that's correct. And we'll get into that. So we're going to have an economic development conversation, but we need to think about, and this is a policy decision. We could continue to be a single-family residential bedroom community for Charlotte, or we could diversify. If we are interested in diversifying, we need to think about greater employment, retail, hospitality, housing, and leisure opportunities for residents. And this will create a better balanced community and a more diversified property tax base, which is something else we've talked about, having all our eggs in the single-family residential basket. So, so that's a view of the community as a whole. So now let's start talking about the organization a little bit. So obviously, Waxhaw was chartered in 1889. It was 1 mile square from the railroad depot downtown with original town limits. And in March 1919, the town confirmed the mayor-council form of government. And they also allowed for the chief of police, tax collector, and town clerk position to be established, which are still established today. And not much activity in amending the town charter until August of 2005, when the form of government changed from a mayor-council to council-manager. But interestingly, at that time, the police chief still reported to the board, and it wasn't until 2007 that an amendment came forward, having the chief of police report to the town manager.
Have we gotten a cleaned-up version of the current charter put together yet? I know that was something that we were looking at.
Yes, it is cleaned up.
Is it online?
I believe so.
Okay.
I'll double check.
And can you send that out to the board, just so that we can eyeball it? Thanks.
So, so what does that mean? Well, that means that the town had 100 years to perfect the mayor-council form of government, and you've had 10 years to perfect the council-manager form of government. And just for demonstration purposes, in the organization I came from, the council-manager form of government was adopted in 1913. So we had 100 years to perfect it. And we've had a lot of political stability. We've only had, in my previous job, there were only 3 managers in Hickory since 1969. So a lot of stability, and they had really fine-tuned the council-manager form of government. And and this is an assessment here. You know, when I came here, it seemed as if almost there were a lot of items, both policy and administrative, that went to the Board of Commissioners. And I know we have changed a lot of that since then. So it's almost like the culture was one that was still hanging on to the mayor-council form of government to some degree. And my experience is when you have that level of detail going to the board, and really the issues you're dealing with are issues that you'd find in a 50,000 population town, not a 15,000 population town with the amount of growth you have, that by its very nature is going to set you up for conflict and gridlock to some degree. And I think part of this culture has been inherited today. However, I think that we're reaching escape velocity away from doing business the previous way, particularly with some of the changes on the contracting levels, the line item budgeting's going away, managing the budget at the board level by the line item budget is going away. So there's been a lot of changes that have been made that will really modernize the way we do business. So just briefly, just the manager's responsibility and then the governing bodies. The state of North Carolina sets out what the town manager's responsibilities are. And one of those is he shall appoint or suspend or remove all city officers, employees not elected by the people in accordance with the general policies of the town. And I can say, since I've been here, the Board of Commissioners has given me 100% full reign to do that. I have had no issues from anyone related to that. He shall, and the second thing it says, he shall also direct and supervise all departments, offices, and agencies of the city. And again, I have not had any issues with. I think we're fulfilling that. And then again, just some odds and ends, attending all the meetings of the board, making sure all the laws and ordinances are implemented, submitting the annual budget and capital program to the council. So a lot of the just things you would expect. On the corporate governance side, one of the things that has really given staff a lot of focus is the adoption of the vision, mission, values, strategic initiatives that the board adopted. That was a huge step forward. Gave us a lot of, basically, I call those our marching orders. That tells us not only what we're going to do, but how we're going to behave and operate. And that was, having that document in place really gives us a lot of focus for the coming year. And that was, again, the governing body setting that up. So this will help give the board a culture of general oversight. So, however, the board operates at a policy level, but I understand that you have to be responsive to citizens. I mean, just as an example, we had the issue with the storage units downtown. I mean, obviously, I was getting phone calls from people. Folks are concerned. There's always going to be a level of that. There's always going to be somebody calling about, seeing a town employee truck somewhere, having a follow up. So that sort of thing comes with the territory. But I think in the whole, this board has been very good about the general oversight side of things. So I think the bottom line is that over time, if there is any lingering, maybe old way of doing business that doesn't point to a more efficient decision making and operation process, I think over time we're going to weed those out. I think ultimately, obviously, only the board can police the board in that matter. But again, on the whole, I have not had any issues. That's my report to the board and staff and to the public. So moving forward, just to reinforce that, one of my responsibilities is to shield staff from politics. Obviously, we have an election coming up. I like for things to flow through the manager when it relates to staff. You do my evaluation, I do their evaluation, and I need to know what your issues are so I can be responsive to you. I have staff report all board contacts to me. I'm not saying you can't contact staff. I'm just saying if you do, I'm going to know about it. And if staff needs to initiate contact with a board member, my directive to staff is to approve that. I'm not a micromanager. You've worked with me for 4 months now, you know that, but I do micromanage that side of it because I have to be responsive to you. And if I don't know what your issues are, then I can't be responsive. And it also gives staff the understanding they need to know who they report to. So managers in the ICMA Code of Ethics, we have an ethical obligation it's called resisting intrusion into administrative and personnel matters by elected officials. That's just part of the Code of Ethics. Y'all stop me and comment or disagree or whatnot as we go through.
No, you're doing good.
Okay. So one of the things that I also have to focus on is being able to respond to the board as one. And, there's 6 of you, and obviously everybody's got, different interest, which is good. So there's always a challenge in responding to the board as one, but I do attempt to do that.
Well, that way the entire board is aware of the interests of the individual members.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, and that's the point. Everybody's equally informed. Nobody should have a piece of information that somebody else doesn't have. So general observations. This is a smorgasbord of just didn't fit into any particular slide. So there's a variety of things here. So to the mayor's point, the operations and procedures, when I walked in, I found the operations and procedures internally, to a large degree, this not all the way around, but was a town of, operating as a town of 3,000 people, not a town of 15,000, meaning a lot of the procedures, the town had grown so much, so fast, that a lot of things had not changed. Simple example, we had salaried employees keeping time cards. Well, salaried employees don't need to keep time cards. So, there were just some basic things like that. It's nobody's fault. I'm not being critical, but there were some things that needed to be changed that would allow for more efficiency within the organization that we've changed. And again, phenomenal growth in a short period of time. Another observation, with my work with this board, you are a pro-business board, but I think some of your policies and procedures that you've inherited to some degree are not, and that causes you problems, particularly, and we talked about the comprehensive plan and the UDO in particular. So I think that the town's reputation needs some work in terms of being pro-business, and I think that'll come as we get some of these policies changed and get some time behind us. But there is I do hear, well, the town's not pro-business, and my response is, well, you know what, the board is very pro-business, but some of the policies we're trying to change are not. I think we need some work on our town-county relationship. I'm not sure what the relationship has been with the past. I've had meetings with the county manager and their staff and trying to reach out to them and build it. And I think we're getting there, but the way of doing business I'm used to is collaborative, and that's where I'm going to head with that. I think to some degree the community's, and this is overstated, but the community's expectations of the town's financial capabilities are beyond its ability to deliver. We have a lot of plans in place, and yeah, the town's doing great with its growth, but we're not doing well enough to implement all the plans we have. And I'll just leave it at that. So that will come with some prioritization that we'll do later in the year with a lot of capital needs. But there are not unlimited resources to address every issue that the town has. We have a very dedicated staff. I think maybe there's with previous boards, they maybe were a little bit shell-shocked at times. So I think there's maybe a lingering level of that, just as far as a comfort level. I'm trying to get them to come out of their shell a little bit. But we do have a very dedicated staff. And I'm going to talk about this in a minute. There are certain, within the organization, this is a critical item here, there are certain skill sets lacking in the town's workforce that we have got to start. And it's going to take, unfortunately, it's going to take some time to get these people in place. And I'll go through what those are in a minute. But we're a few years behind where we need to be with some specific skill sets having those in place. And also institutional knowledge. We don't have a lot of folks that have worked for the town for a long period of time. I know the chief has, and Todd and some others, but if you look at the tenure of town employees, it's not very long. And with Greg leaving, that hurt because he had a lot of knowledge as well.
Well, probably the most tenure we have is in the Public Services Department, because most of the rest of the staff has been added in the last 10 years. Town Hall used to operate, the town administrator, the clerk, and the police chief, essentially, is what it used to be.
So that's...
We've added all of that staff in that period of time.
So with stability and time, we'll get to where we have more institutional knowledge. But again, the vital skill sets, I'll come back to that. That's something we're going to talk about. And I think it's going to take about 3 years to get the right people in the right positions in place. So what has already or will be changed? There's been a lot. Again, internally, we've changed a number of inefficient administrative processes. I mean, I can go through the list. When I go through this, I don't want to give the impression that everything was broken, because it's not. But there were some obvious things that needed to be changed, and we've changed them internally. One of my way of doing business, I believe in empowering department heads and division heads to make decisions they should be making. It seemed as if when I started, folks were asking me questions that I would expect them to be making the decision on. And if I need to be answering those questions, then we don't need those people. So my directive to staff is, we're going to empower you, but we're going to hold you accountable. But there was a lot that was coming across the manager's desk that probably, and that's not a criticism, but just the way I do it, probably did not need to happen, or I'm not going to do it that way. We've reorganized a number of town departments. We did that through the budget. There's probably another round of that coming next fiscal year. Excuse me. So now we'll know how much various services and activities are costing the taxpayer. I feel like too much was going to the board for approval, and we talked about that. We're fixing that. I think we've made huge steps in just the last few months. We eliminated the budget being adopted at a line item level, the whole moving money between line items. And not that we're hiding anything. Anybody's welcome to come by, and we'll be glad to show them what we've got. But in terms of bringing that level of decision-making to the board is not what we're going to do. Change the budget discussion to a broader functional view: economic development, culture and recreation, public safety, even beyond the departmental view, just a broader functional view of services that the town provides. And now the board only approves large, high-impact contracts. And you're reorganizing your boards and committees. And I do say they have to be structured in a way that serves you, because they work for you, and I commend you for doing that. The comprehensive plan is being reworked. Again, the UDO, when that's done, fewer zoning issues will go to the board for your consideration as we update that. So we're changing, so with all that, we're changing the conversation from a 3,000-foot view, excuse me, to a 30,000-foot view. Okay, needed skill sets. This is important. Engineering, we're currently advertising for a town engineer. The issues that we deal with related to transportation, stormwater, floodwater, just civil engineering issues in our parks, I mean, the list is long. Even though we don't have water and sewer, having conversations with the county about water and sewer issues, we need expertise at the table to be able to engage in those conversations. And at a staff level, we don't have it. And that we're advertising for a town engineer and someone that would also oversee the development services area for the town. So we're heading down that road. And I don't know that one person is going to do it, but it'll be a good start. And we will be contracting with various engineering firms for work. But having that individual on staff, and again building that institutional knowledge with that person, that's over time. That's where we're going to need to go. Finance. This isn't. The two folks we have in the finance area do a great job. I think we need the next level of this. Maybe not right now. We're managing. I mean, people are getting paid, bills are getting paid, taxes are getting collected, things are getting done. But over time, we need to, somebody that's more attuned to the laws related to public borrowing, purchasing efficiencies, investments, cash management. We do cash management, but I think there's a level of expertise in our finance area that is lacking. But we're managing that. Public information, I know at times there's a frustration with the board about not getting ahead of things that are out on social media. And it's difficult to do that if you don't have a dedicated public information staff. So over time, when we talk about skill sets, internal and external communication, media relations, website management, we're going to need a dedicated person or staff to manage that function for the town. Let me back up. Okay, neighborhood planner. Waxhaw is somewhat unique because we have so many HOAs. So you have organized neighborhoods, but then in certain parts of town, you don't have organized neighborhoods. But they have issues that they need addressed as well. So I think one of the ways of getting to that is we did this where I came from. We had a neighborhood planner, and they went out and engaged the neighborhoods. They would let them know about rezonings that were coming up. They would let them know about town activities, projects that were undergoing. They'd be a resource for the neighborhood, a contact person. They would help neighborhoods that weren't organized get organized if they wanted to.
Would they do things like help support neighborhood watch type of efforts?
Neighborhood watch, they'd run a community, a neighborhood college program.
Right.
Yeah, all that sort of thing.
Fantastic.
So that, I think over time, that's something that, and Waxhaw's also unique, with the way the subdivisions are. It's almost like they're cities within cities to some degree with some of these subdivisions. So engaging those folks and really letting them know about town activities and what's going on, I think over time that needs to be something that we consider. Potentially, yeah. Code enforcement. This isn't something. I don't think it's a lot of attention, but there are code enforcement issues in town. Now, my welcome to my neighborhood letter was a letter telling me I can't have from my HOA telling me I couldn't have my trash can out in my driveway. So I think or I was going to be called before the HOA board. But
warm welcome, right?
Yeah, I got a violation letter. It was like the first week. They didn't. So I think from the HOA perspective, I think you don't find many code. There are some, but you don't find many code enforcement issues in those types of neighborhoods. but around town, you do find code enforcement issues, and I think it's more prevalent than what folks may believe or want to believe that it is. So I think over time, and we do code enforcement, but we don't have the dedicated staff doing it. So that's something that we need to have a conversation about. Matter of fact, on Friday, I'm going to have a tour with a resident on Rehoboth Road, and she's going to show me some of the issues she's dealing with down Rehoboth Road. So that's just on code enforcement. And then, administrative support, to get folks in place and then to have them bogged down with paperwork. So, I mean, there's another level that would need to be addressed there. So just these when you look at these types of folks and skills that they would bring to the table, you're probably talking between 8 and 10 people. However, that doesn't include the increase in manpower needs in the police department, public services, parks and rec.
Now, the administrative services, would that also include dedicated administrative support for the board?
We're going to talk about that.
Okay.
That's on the slide, yes.
Okay, good.
Okay. So that's a critical, particularly the engineering side of the house. That one's one that really is, hopefully we'll get the position filled and get that person on board, but it really goes beyond that just one. So we're talking about adding staff. So how do we build an organization without increasing our bureaucracy? My philosophy is to hire good people and allow them to do their job. So we hired Kurt on, and I'm going to go out on a limb and say he's a good person. So I'm going to, and we're going to turn him loose to do his job. So I don't expect to hear any complaints from downtown. Okay, all right, no problems. So we're going to decentralize control but increase accountability. So that relates to the merit program. Folks are going to be on a work plan. We're going to have work plans that are approved. You're going to be evaluated based on how well you have accomplished what you said you're going to accomplish. I'm going to give folks flexibility to do their job, but at the end of the day, they'll be held accountable. And that's the same relationship that I have with the board. So my job is to provide an environment where staff can focus and build an organization free of drama and distractions. One of the first things I said when I started was, and you'll remember if you were in the room, a staff person, is that I'm easy to get along with. I'm not a micromanager, but one of my jobs is to get rid of distractions. So if you become a distraction, or if there's a process that's a distraction, or an issue that's a distraction, my job is to get rid of that, because we don't have many staff. We've got good staff, but we've got to provide an environment where folks can focus on what they're doing so we can accomplish things. So we can't control that at a board level, but what we can do is set up an efficient decision-making process for the board that creates shorter, more effective meetings. So that's one of the things that we've been trying to do, and taking some of the things off your plate that probably you shouldn't have been having to deal with. And within that, and these are all works in progress. Agenda development. Have we got everything down perfect? I mean, Melody has taken it from 0 to 60, but I know there's still improvement that can be made. But agenda development is one. My report to the Board of Commissioners is another. The town manager's weekly communication. So I need to improve on communication with the board so that you're well informed. So when we have our board meetings, we're dealing with policy issues and not so much some of the smaller stuff. The quarterly financial reports. I'll do one tonight. Make sure I'm getting you the financial information that you need. So I would ask for feedback from board members on what's working and what's not working. What do we need to improve? In addition to that, one of the things that this board does that it will probably continue to do for the coming years at a higher rate than what might be otherwise the case is having board workshops. That really helps to address some of the big items so you don't have to sit here 4 hours talking about something. I think my experience, if your board meetings, and sometimes they'll just by nature have to, but if they go beyond 2.5 hours, you start to have the diminishing returns, I think.
And we need to get our work sessions on a set schedule so people know when they are and we can plan around them.
Yeah, exactly. So those are some things at the staff level that we can do and work with the board on creating a more efficient decision-making process for the board that works for you. So it's just some other areas that need addressing. The town's financial management software is functional but is inadequate. I spent the first week here putting numbers into an Excel spreadsheet so I could get them in a format where I could manipulate the numbers and develop the budget. It'll be something that I'm going to have to tackle. We're doing triage right now to some degree, so that one's on the list. But we're getting bills paid, we're getting people paid, we're collecting property tax revenue and accounting for the town's funds, but from a reporting perspective, it leaves a lot to be desired. Town's website needs to be reworked. That's another one on the list. We recognize that. And I'm going to give you a real-life example of why that's the case at the manager's my report during the regular board meeting here later. Need a new personnel policy. I know Wendy has got a draft of one done, and we've gone through that. Wendy here? Okay, so she did great work on that, so we recognize that we need to update our personnel policy as well. That'll come. Employee morale, I don't think that's a huge issue, but that's something I know with what the board's going to do with Employee Appreciation Day and that sort of thing really helps. So that's always something that I focus on is morale of the employees. Again, more departmental reorganization might be needed next year. We can talk more about that as time comes for that. I would suggest, part of me thinks this is pretty neat, we need to keep it. Then part of me, checks need to be signed by staff and not board members. Part of me thinks that it is kind of unique that board members still sign the checks. I don't have any issue with folk, obviously seeing what's being paid or paid to our vendors, but it's odd for a town of 15,000 to have board members signing checks.
It's a holdover still.
Well, and it's odd for a town of 15,000 to sign checks manually. So even beyond the, but I think, part of me thinks that's kind of, maybe that's something we need to keep doing. But we can have a conversation about that. But I don't. Yeah, that's the rustic part. That's right. Yeah. I'm not used to writing so much. Yeah. Okay. Should town manager be the face of the village news? I don't like being front and center on the village news. We can have a conversation about that as well. We need to talk about that. I don't know that that's appropriate. I don't know what the history is there, but
I think that what we need to decide is what is the village news? Is it a staff newsletter? Because for a period of time, it became very much a staff newsletter. Is it a community communication from town hall, from the board? So I guess what we need to do is define what the village news is, and then out of that can determine what's the appropriate format.
And I would suggest that maybe as we hire the public information individual who develops the whole communication strategy, it would evolve from there.
Yeah, we do need to have a conversation about the village news and its role in the town.
Yeah, the Village News, a little history there. The Village News was started by a gentleman who, in the community, that was about the early 2000s, I think. And, because he was putting out information about the town meetings and that sort of thing, along with his other snippets, recipes and jokes and that kind of stuff. The town provided him some support. They gave him a computer. This was back in 2005, 2004, something like that. And, provided him assistance. Then when he moved out of town, the events coordinator at the time, I think, was Caroline Hasty, and she took over the publication of it. And so that's kind of the progression of where it came from, and then of course being internal as being put out by staff, it went through the various iterations of to bring it to what it is today. So, but it was originally just a one guy's attempt to help the community be better informed about what's going on. So.
So we'll need to talk about that. Kayla had told me about it's time for another letter from the manager for the Village News. So here's a question that I don't know that we need to answer today, but we definitely need to. We're going to have another meeting where we talk about board, staff, protocol, and just really fine-tuning and reducing that in the writing. But what are the board's administrative needs of staff? What's this board's administrative need, and what's appropriate? And it's important to me to be able to respond to everybody equally and offer everybody the same thing. So if that's a dedicated staff person, if it's something as simple as, well, just taking phone calls and messages and sorting your mail, what is appropriate for this board? What are your expectations? And along those same lines, what are the board's space and office needs, because I can tell you that the space we had dedicated for you at Town Hall has now been consumed by staff. And but there is the old Town Hall, and the space in behind.
The old planning department
that
building.
might be an option. So I guess ultimately the board needs to have a conversation about what sort of support you all need, and then what sort of space is needed.
And, I agree with you 100% that the administrative support should be equally available to every board member. And on the flip side of that, we also have to understand that every board member will not use the same amount of administrative support. Some may choose to use more of it, and, some may not need as much administrative support. But as active as the board members want to be, we really should have the underlying support to facilitate that.
I think I would ask you, coming from a previous jurisdiction in 20-something years, what was appropriate in that jurisdiction, or what was the level and how that looked?
We would, any financial transaction for a board member, we would handle. Travel arrangements, registration for the national conferences, state conferences, the league stuff. So any kind of financial transaction that the board would have with the town would be handled by staff, making those arrangements. Just basically taking messages and maybe scheduling a meeting now and then, but generally the meeting would involve a staff person. A staff wouldn't be an elected official and a citizen. The elected official would do that, but if a staff person was involved and the board member had requested it, of course that would come through the manager's office. But beyond that, there was no dedicated staff for elected officials. But every jurisdiction is different.
Right. What was the
Physical
touchdown?
space, the board, we provided, just similar to what we do, we provided office space. The mayor had an office in the basement of Town Hall, and he put up wallpaper that made it look like he was looking out the Empire State Building. So when you went to visit him, it looked like you were on the 35th floor of the Empire State Building. You were in the basement of, but he rarely used the space.
Dreaming big, I see.
Yes. But truthfully, in Hickory, it was very limited, but I know in other organizations, a board might have, a dedicated or part-time staff person. It's whatever your pleasure is. But I need to, and again, it goes back to some degree, keeping staff focused and making sure they're doing things that I need to have them be doing. And if the board wants a higher level of what we're able to do, then we're going to.
You just need to know that.
We need to know that so we can put resources towards that.
Right.
I do think you need space for, if you wanted to meet with a citizen. We would always make space available to board members if a constituent that wanted to meet on something. That's always been appropriate. Yeah. Okay. Well, questions, comments, and reactions. Of course, this is a two-way street here, so you can give me my. One of the things in the work plan is to have a conversation between the manager and the board about protocol, about how we're going to operate together, really fine-tuning that. I went over a high level here, but that would probably be the appropriate time to do that.
Well, I just want to say that that your report today has, for me, reconfirmed that we made the right decision in bringing you on board. I think that what you've shown us is exactly, what we were expecting, or at least what I was expecting, having worked with this organization as long as I have. The reality is we've got a lot of good material, and we've got some work to do to improve the efficiencies and professionalism and so forth. So, we've got some work to do to improve and mature the organization, but, what we're working with is, good stuff to start out with, so.
More is
exactly what I expected.
Much more is right than wrong.
Sure.
So.
Yeah, good. All right, any thoughts or questions for Warren on his report? All right. Thank you so much. And I'm glad you all stayed for that.